Bandidos, what up? Your boy Tux here with the Division 2. Have you ever died because of bad timing on a reload? I have. There are LMGs that can counter that pitfall, and we just got a new one that can give you a 180 round magazine, big enough for any task. Of course, I'm talking about the new Pakhan LMG, an exotic RPK that has players scratching their head. Is it any good? And why bother when we have the Bullet King? Well, let's find out.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're cool.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
Big video today. We're diving into the Pakhan LMG, how to get it, how it works, how it stacks up against the other big dogs, including the Bullet King, and if it's even worth using. I've got a damage support build for the Pakhan that you're going to want to use. So if you're just here for the builds, use the timestamps to hop around. Otherwise, stick with me. You don't want to miss this. First off, you can get the Pakhan simply by leveling up on your rewards track. The rewards track is free, and so is the Pakhan. The Pakhan's talent seems pretty straightforward, right? It says, kills with the weapon give you a stack. Each stack is worth 75% of the base magazine and applies to the next magazine. You can have up to 4 stacks. This creates new magazine caps, starting from 60, which is the base, to 90, 120, 150, and finally 180 whopping rounds in the mag. Seems easy enough, right? Now, for what it doesn't say, here's a curveball. Skills like turrets and drones can earn stacks for you. Surely that's not supposed to happen. And there's an early reload penalty, sort of. Or maybe it's to protect you. I'm not quite sure. If I got 4 kills, which created 4 stacks, and I consumed those with a reload for a 180 round mag, then I get 1 kill and reload again. This will mark that stack consumed in the bank for the next reload. Remember, 1 stack takes you from 60 to 90 rounds, right? So I won't be able to reload again until I go below 90 rounds. Even if I added 4 more kills before I got down to 90 rounds, I still have to wait. The good news is that when you are able to reload, once I get below 90 rounds, it will go with whatever's the highest value between the stack consumed to set the reload threshold or the number of stacks on deck when you actually reload. So in this case, I get the 180 rounds. But what that means is that I wasted a stack by reloading early. So from when I earned the 180 rounds initially to when I actually reloaded, I had created 5 total stacks. And because I forced the algorithm to make a decision, it threw one of those stacks away and said, hey, I'm going to give you the higher one, which is 4 kills. It's not a big deal, but this is how it works. The whole point is just make sure your reloads are really intentional. So if all of that crossed your eyes, don't worry. Managing this weapon is actually pretty simple. Just play by these rules. Don't reload until you have 4 kills on deck, or reload when your mag is dry, or don't reload at all and have a bottomless mag. That third one sounds pretty cool, right? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that with the builds. All right, now let's talk about how the Pakhan stacks up against other top dogs in the game. So here's the deal with sustained damage. Think of it as how much pain you can dish out while factoring in shooting and reloading. Now, we're only using base weapon stats here, so no talents. But I put the mag mods on all the other LMGs to get a more realistic comparison to the exotic. For example, the GR9 has a base 200 round mag. In game, it's going to have 250 rounds with the mod. And since that's what we're really talking about here is magazine size and base damage, it's fair to make sure that every weapon has its potential on the mag. With a 90 round mag, which would be 1 kill with the Pakhan sustained DPS is around 600,384. Pretty solid, right? But if you bump it up to 180 rounds, which is the 4 kills, or the peak mag, which you can maintain, by the way, it climbs to about 694,000. That's a big leap just from having more ammo before you hit the reload. Now let's see how it compares to some other heavy hitters. The Stoner's sitting at about 534,400 DPS, and the GR9 is close behind with 530,000 DPS. Even with just 90 rounds, the Pakhan's beating them out, and with 180, it's leaving them in the dust. I can hear your thoughts. These must be parlor tricks, sleight of hand. What is the Pakhan sustained DPS at its base before any kills at that 60 round mag? And it's a fair question. Let's strip off all of the extended mags and compare the LMGs against the Pakhan without any kills when you start the fight, because you need to know that too, right? How hard is it going to be to get your first kill? So the Pakhan sustained DPS is 528,958. Let's call that 529,000. It's still beating out every other LMG in the game. Point is, the Pakhan's a beast. Whether you're rocking the smaller 90 round mag or going big with the 180, it's a strong pick that can handle with or flat out outshine the other top LMGs in those drawn out fights. But remember, this is without other factors like damage talents and build bonuses. When you bring those in, you can get quite a different outcome. With that in mind, I have concluded that the Pakhan's best use is on a team support build. If you're running solo or looking for a pure DPS build, I think you're better off taking a damage talent on the RPK, or just going with something else entirely. Before we jump into the builds, let's tackle the big question. Why does the Pakhan exist if we have the Bullet King? The Bullet King's endless magazine is iconic. The longer the engagement, then the more Bullet King is going to shine. When we're comparing the Pakhan versus the Bullet King, the mods do come into play, and I am using the base weapon damage, but the Pakhan has a fixed 15% weapon damage mod that I can't strip from it. That's one of the things the devs did to give the weapon an edge. So that's going to boost that 71.5% base damage. Essentially, the Pakhan optic is part of its base damage, and we give the Bullet King the same treatment. It just doesn't have a fixed weapon damage mod. But when we do a side by side on the sustained DPS, the reload time of the Pakhan is going to close that gap between it and the Bullet King, but it still does slightly pull ahead. But if you're in super long engagements, then you might as well pull into the Bullet King. That spread is 11,500 DPS. That's 1.7% higher than the Bullet King, and isn't quite big enough. In other words, when it comes to firing forever, the Bullet King is still the king. Okay, now let's slap ourselves with some reality. This is a testing range fantasy. There are very few opportunities to be able to shoot forever. In the tougher content like heroic and legendary, you're punished for being out of cover. And to put down 180 rounds is considered a long time out of cover. So what if we used the common denominator between the Bullet King and the Pakhan? What if we limited the sustained damage to 180 rounds so that we could do a true side-by-side comparison? Well, for the Pakhan, the time to fire 180 rounds is 18 seconds. The Bullet King can spit them out in 14.4. However, the damage difference between the two is a lot greater. The Pakhan's DPS is 20.52% higher than the Bullet King's DPS. And if you consider 180 rounds more realistic than firing indefinitely, you might consider the Pakhan as the better Bullet King. I mean, just to be real, the endless mag sounds cool, but it's overrated when enemies are shooting back. It's just not practical in real gameplay. There's more. The Pakhan doesn't just hit harder, it handles almost twice better. That means your shots land where you want them, even during sustained fire. The Bullet King has slightly better optimal range, but with the poor accuracy, it won't land more shots than the RPK. So what does this mean in combat? Simple. More damage, faster kills. Think about time to kill. The Pakhan's superior handling means a higher percentage of your shots hit the mark, boosting your effective DPS. So to close the discussion on if the Pakhan is worth it, if you're still thinking, well, the Bullet King's infinite ammo just sounds better. And I gotta say, there is something to be said about simplicity. The Bullet King, point, shoot, numb out. But there's a reason we don't see a lot of Bullet Kings out there in gameplay. The fantasy doesn't fulfill. I have fun using the Bullet King too, until I use just about any other LMG. Then I remember why I don't use the Bullet King. Instead of forcing the Pakhan on something like Strikers, we are going with builds the Pakhan naturally synergizes with. Okay, this one's my favorite build. It's the Pakhan with 4 pieces of Negotiator's Dilemma for legendary gameplay. Negotiator's whole deal is that it can kill multiple enemies at the same time. So it gives you crit chance and crit damage. In hostile negotiations, you have to crit to mark the targets. You can do up to 3. When you get a kill, you're gonna get 2% critical hit damage. That stacks 20 times, so that's 40% critical hit damage, but that does reset after combat ends. Because I'm running the backpack, it has the critical measures talent that pushes the damage from 60 to 112% damage. I basically have weapon damage, crit damage, and crit chance on everything here. It's an all red build. Now the chest is Palisades. This gives me 10% armor on kill, plus we're killing 2 or 3 enemies at a time, so that's 30% armor on kill, crit chance and crit damage, and then I'm running Obliterate because it's based off of crits. This weapon combined with the Ninja Bike knee pads has a really nice synergy. I didn't think I was ever going to use these knee pads. Because like I said, there's plenty of time in the game to reload. You don't really need an endless mag. So why am I running this? For one, it's nice to have that basically infinite bonus armor, by the way, just by doing a cover to cover or vaulting, which is really easy. You don't have to go long distances. You can literally go cover to cover right next to yourself. By doing that, it doesn't count as a reload for your weapon. So you can refresh that 180 rounds over and over and over again, whether you get kills or not. So once you earn it for the first time, then you just do cover to cover every time you need to reload. If that sounds maybe inconvenient to you, let me just tell you, the time it takes to consume 180 rounds is a lot. There's going to be pauses in combat where you have nothing else to do but a little cover to cover move. But don't force the knee pads. If you find yourself in a situation where you have to manually reload, odds are, because you've been saving your stacks and not consuming them, you're always going to have 4 kills on deck, because you never consume the stacks. And that is the name of the game with the Pakhan. Don't consume your stacks until you have all 4 collected. And because of the ninja bike, every kill is going to the stacks and not being consumed. Okay, I'll stop talking about the ninja bike knee pads. Okay, we're going with the fortified smart cover. As a reality, you need some sort of defense and legendary. And you can't run shields with LMGs. So we have the Reviver Hive as a backup. Both of those skills will be infinite. So if I use my Reviver Hive, I can get it back instantly. And that's because of the modifiers. Specifically, the very bottom, it's electronics. At tier 5, all skill cooldowns are reset. In order to take advantage of that at will every 60 seconds, then you're gonna wanna run Tech Link. That's gonna push your electronics to tier 5. When you activate this, it's gonna reset your cooldowns. So the infinite smart cover means infinite bonus armor. Moreover, when it comes to smart cover, just by getting out of cover and snapping back into cover, you can refresh that bonus armor it's providing. And it's significant. That's 50% bonus armor you're gonna want loaded up, because you're gonna start at tier 4 and getting to tier 5 is really easy. But this is gonna take 25% of your crit chance and add it to your crit hit damage. Ends up being about 50% crit damage. With negotiators, you got 90% between the two. And then I'm running tech upgrades. So this gives me skill duration based on my critical hit damage. Finally, I'm using the one that gives us more headshot damage. I'm running gunner because that gives us 10% armor on kill. We're at 66% crit chance and 149% crit damage. When we activate Tech Link, we're gonna be at 84% crit chance. And when we have our build buffs, that should be around 250%, give or take. So overall, how do I feel about the Pakhan? I think it's been fun to use. Is it my favorite LMG or exotic in the game? No. If I would stick it in a tier list, it'd be a low A or a high B. A great weapon, nothing wrong with the exotic itself, but there's just better options out there in the LMG class, like the Pestilence. All right, Banditos, let me know what you think. Catch you on the next one.
Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Tuxedo Bandido, and if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on the good stuff I have coming for you. And if you like content like this, be sure to check out the video I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you would like me to cover, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make things possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be the same without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Wait, did we just become best friends?